Good morning, everyone. I see what the Cardinal meant, that he can't see very well, that we can't see everyone. But good morning, and thank you for having me to come here to present today. I'm very honored to be here, and I want to thank the translators especially, because I've been listening to their translation into English from Polish, and I think I know what's going on. So I feel sure that you're going to understand what I'm saying, even if you don't understand English. The Ruth Institute, as was mentioned, is an international interfaith coalition to defend the family and build a civilization of love. I want to tell you that these slides that you're going to see here, I will send to you if you will give me your email address. At the break, Father will allow you to sign up, and I'll send you the slides and also the script if you would like to have it. And all of these slides have live links on them, meaning if you click on it, it will take you to the correct website that I'm referring to. So there are a lot of information available here. Throughout this presentation, I'll have more resources listed on red slides so you can find them easily. And at the bottom of our website, every single page has all sorts of links where you can easily get to the material. So my talk, we had some back and forth discussion about how long I was going to talk. I was originally told I was going to talk for 90 minutes, and now it turns out I'm going to talk really for 60 minutes, which is okay. But as you can see on the slide, I'm ready. I'm always ready for everything, you see. And so my talk is broken into 3 parts, and we'll cover the first 2 is pretty much what's going to happen. The first part of my talk is I'm going to give you a short defense of traditional Christian sexual ethics, to explain what do we stand for? What do we believe in? What are we positively for? What are we trying to defend? And what are the sexual revolutionaries trying to break down? The second part is the 3 big ideas that you must master. And there are really only 3 big ideas. I know it seems like a lot. It's all kinds of crazy things coming at you from every direction. But there's really only 3 big ideas. And if you get those down, you're going to be fine. So that's what I'm going to do in the second part of the talk. And the third part of the talk I was leaving for a surprise. So maybe I'll just tell you the topic at the end, but probably won't have a chance to actually cover it. So the first thing I want to open up with is to tell you that this first part of the talk, Defending Traditional Christian Sexual Ethics, was originally developed for an American audience of pro-life and pro-family activists. And I wanted to create a talk that anyone could use. And so we're giving these slides to people in America. We'll give them to you if you want to translate them. We give the slides in the script, and anyone can go give this talk to defend traditional Christian sexual ethics. So the statistics that you will see in these slides are based on United States data, but that's easy enough for you to understand. I hope you'll be able to use the presentation also. The second thing that I want to say is that I, as an American, feel that I must apologize for what my country is doing. The United States has been exporting the sexual revolution all around the world through media and through policy. And we, in my opinion, we were once a great country, but you cannot be a great country. We cannot be a great country while promoting the destruction of innocent human life and promoting the destruction of the family structure that protects innocent children. And so on behalf of my pro-life friends and pro-family colleagues in the United States, I apologize for what our country is doing. And I want you to know that there are many people in the United States who agree with you and your values. Do not be misled by what you see in the media. And finally, I want to apologize a little bit for the topic itself, for what I have to talk to you about. I'm well aware that decent people do not like to talk about sex in public. However, our opponents talk about it constantly. You can't get them to shut up. They're talking about it all the time. So every time you go like this, do you ever feel like that? Every time you do this, the enemy is marching forward. They're advancing while you're disgusted. So you have to get over it. And I apologize, you shouldn't have to, but this is where we are, and this is what we need to deal with. So if we say nothing, the enemies of traditional Christian sexual ethics will win by default. And so that's what we can't allow that. We have to put up a fight. And if you get nothing else from my presentation today, there is one big thing that I want you to get. You must not apologize for traditional Christian sexual ethics. You must never apologize for the church's teachings on human sexuality. You must be proud of it. You must defend it. You must not let them scare you into being ashamed. And if you have questions, you feel like you can't defend it, you don't have all the answers, I want you to understand the answers are out there. We can bring you the answers. You can find the answers, so you don't have to be afraid. And it's very important that you get that. If you get nothing else, I want you to walk out of here confident that this can be done. And we need the people of Poland, the Catholic people of Poland, to do this, because America's falling apart. I hate to tell you, but we're in a lot of trouble in the United States. So with that in mind, I'm going to turn now to part one of my presentation, Defending Traditional Christian Sexual Ethics Without Fear, Without Apology. If you see a broken down house in an otherwise nice neighborhood, you might ask yourself, what is wrong with these people? They should pull themselves together. But if you see an entire neighborhood destroyed where every house is broken down, you wonder, what happened here? And then somebody tells you that a hurricane came through, or maybe 2 hurricanes came through, and the hurricane destroyed everything. It affected everybody. It tore down big houses and small houses. It tore down houses in the city and in the country. It tore down houses in the shoreline and on the inland. Everybody is affected by the hurricane. And so now you don't blame anybody. You don't blame the people. You say, what can I do to help? Where do we even start with this mess? Now look at this poor guy. He was partially prepared, at least a little bit. You can see he's got that yellow thing in the front there is an electrical power generator. He's got a gas can, but he can't move his truck. He can't move the truck until he gets gas in the truck. And he can't move the truck until he has somebody with a chainsaw to get rid of that tree, right? So he can't get this done without a bunch of people to help him. And it occurs to you that maybe we aren't going to be able to do this completely on our own. Maybe we're going to need outside help. And I can tell you from my experience in living through those 2 hurricanes, because I'm from Lake Charles, Louisiana, and those are authentic Lake Charles, Louisiana hurricane pictures that you just saw, we're going to need outside help. And after our first hurricane, we had 23,000 trucks come to help us rebuild our infrastructure. And you can see, well, what a great comfort it was to see those trucks coming down the road to help us. Now, something like this, something like a hurricane, has been happening to the family. We have been living through a cultural and social hurricane for decades. Back in the day, when divorce was around 6% in the United States, and even poor people got married and stay married, you might think badly of people who got divorced or who had children out of wedlock. But today in the United States, divorce disrupts the lives of 1 million children per year, new children each year. Today, over 40% of U.S. births are to unmarried women, and over half of births to millennial mothers are unmarried women. And so now you have to ask yourself, what happened here? Something happened that's affecting everyone. We've been living through a cultural hurricane called the sexual revolution since roughly 1965. The hurricane says everybody can have as much sex as they want and nothing bad will happen. The revolution tells us kids are resilient. They don't really need their parents all that much. The parents can change their sex partners or their living arrangements as often as they want, and nothing bad will happen. The hurricane says that differences between men and women are not all that significant. We can change our sex roles and even the sex of our bodies any way we want, and nothing bad will happen. But many bad things have happened. How might we make things better? Traditional Christian sexual ethics teaches something very different from the sexual revolution. We believe that every human being who has ever come into existence has been conceived and come into existence because God wants him or her to be here. God could have created each and every new human being with a special act of creation requiring no human participation at all. But in fact, in the world in which we actually live, new human beings come into existence as a result of interactions between a man and a woman. God wants our participation in his loving creation. He built this into our bodies. And so let's just focus on one issue. What is owed to children? The Ruth Institute believes that every person has the right to know his or her cultural identity and genetic heritage. Every child has a right to a relationship with his or her natural mother and father, except for an unavoidable tragedy. Now, sometimes in America, and maybe you have this here too in Poland, sometimes in America we hear people express concerns about children, their unequal access to things like schooling or housing or health care. But I have a different concern. Do kids have access to their own parents? Do kids even get to know who their parents are? So let's say, as good and decent people, we want to make sure that as many kids as possible get to live with their own mom and dad for their whole childhood. Well, how would we go about doing that? Well, for the child to be in relationship with both parents, we'd want the parents to first be in relationship with each other. We'd want them to have a plan for cooperating with each other in the raising of the child. We'd want the parents to get along reasonably well with each other. We want them to live together so the child doesn't have to change houses every weekend. And we want that plan to be a lifelong plan, not just for 18 years, not just for 10 years, but a lifelong plan, because the relationship between parent and child is still important even after the child has grown up and left home. We want to limit the things that distract parents from paying attention to the child and being loving towards the other parent. Of course, some distractions are inevitable. People get sick and have accidents. People get grumpy and have bad days. But we want the adults to avoid the avoidable problems, which would include passionate or sexual relationships with somebody who's not involved with the child, with somebody other than the child's other parent. So, how could we arrange for this kind of long-term cooperation for the parents, between parents, so that the child can have access to both of them without too much trouble? Well, let's spell it out in terms of the traditional prohibitions that are so often associated with Christianity, the thou shalt nots. No sex before marriage, no sex outside of marriage, no divorce without serious cause, and no attempts at subsequent marriage while the spouse is still living, and absolutely no anonymous sperm or egg donation. In that situation, the child never knows one of the parents. And finally, no petty criticism of your spouse. This was always part of traditional Christian marriage package. As we can see from this quotation from the old Baltimore Catechism, this was used in the United States for generations to provide reliable information about traditional Catholic teaching. What are the chief effects of the sacrament of matrimony? Question and answer form catechism. What are the chief effects of the sacrament of matrimony? And the answer is the special help of God for husband and wife to love each other faithfully, to bear with each other's faults. I want to emphasize that point. To bear with each other's faults and to bring up their children properly. Now, instead of thou shalt nots, let's restate this lifelong cooperation plan in positive terms. What are we positively supposed to do rather than what we're not allowed to do? First, we need to get married before having sex. Second, only have sex with your spouse. Stay married unless somebody does something really awful. Be nice to your spouse and be satisfied with the number of children that God gives you. Be satisfied with the number and timing of the children God gives you, whether he gives you many children or a few. Be satisfied with the condition of the children that God gives you. This illustration is of former Pennsylvania Senator Rick Santorum and his family, including his disabled daughter, Bella. Bella has a rare genetic condition that she was not supposed to survive for very long. And as you can see, Bella loves her daddy. And as you can also see from this photo of her first communion, the entire family dotes on this little girl. What is this called? This is traditional Christian sexual morality supported by traditional Christian sexual ethics. That's the package. And the overall social result of this system, the social result of this system, is for every child a mother and a father. No matter how rich and powerful they may be, no matter how influential they may be, for every child a mother and a father. No matter how poor, no matter how seemingly unimportant, every child a mother and a father. And for every man, no matter how rich, no matter how powerful, one and only one wife. For every woman, no matter how glamorous, no matter how beautiful, one and only one husband. The overall social result is true equality. For every child, a mother and a father. For every man, one wife. For every woman, one husband. We could even call this reproductive equality. Do you have this term in your culture? Reproductive justice, reproductive equality. Do you ever use this? This is a thing in English. Well, this is true equality because everybody's reproducing on equal terms. We could even call it social justice because everybody in the society has the same basic good of a mother and a father. It's traditional Christian sexual ethics that secures equality and justice for all. This is the birthright of all children, to be conceived in the loving embrace of their own mother and father, married to each other for a lifetime. Now you might ask, what about adoption? This is a very important question. Of course, we must make some provision for the care of children who cannot be cared for by their own mother and father. This is going to happen sometimes. Well, we have to recognize that children in these situations have already sustained a loss. We owe it to them to give them the best we can and to try to replicate as nearly as possible what they have lost. In some cases, this will mean that other relatives will take care of them. In other cases, it will mean that they'll be adopted by a stable, loving, married couple. In all cases, it means that we give priority to the needs of the child for parents over the desires of an adult for a child. Now, some rich and powerful and influential people don't like this system. They think there are too many people in the world. They've spent billions of dollars trying to reduce population growth. They want to replace traditional Christian sexual ethics with a system that's more to their liking. A system that allows them to do whatever they want. They try to convince us that traditional Christian sexual ethics is outdated. They say, we have contraception now. We don't need traditional Christian sexual ethics at all. But they failed to mention that all forms of contraception sometimes fail. When it fails, let's think through what are the options that the parents have if contraception fails. Well, the first option is they can get married and raise the child together. This is not ideal if the parents are not really a good match and they're being kind of forced or stampeded into marriage. But it can be made to work, and traditionally, this was very often the solution to this problem. Second option is that both parents can relinquish their parental rights and make an adoption plan for the child. Also not ideal because the child loses access to both biological parents. However, the child does have the opportunity to be raised by a stable married couple who love each other. Another option is one parent raises the child alone with limited and uncertain contact with the other parent. This is worse than just not ideal. This is fundamentally unjust to the child. And finally, the last option is you can just kill the baby, just have an abortion, which is obviously completely unjust to the child. In other words, when contraception fails, the options range from not ideal to totally unjust to the child. And so if we can predict these outcomes in advance, we can truthfully say that the contraceptive system is systematically unjust to children. We know in advance that this is what's going to happen to some children. It's systematically incorrect. Now, some people might say that this system you're proposing places great demands and hardships on parents. And I reply, when there's something hard that needs to be done, the adults should do the hard thing, not the children. Some might say that this is all well and good to be concerned about the interests of children, but what about gay people? This system isn't fair to them. Why can't they use the modern techniques that allow people to become parents without having sex with the child's other parent? These techniques are inherently unfair to the child. The child is deprived of one of his or her parents, not by an unavoidable tragedy. They're separated from their parents from birth, by design, and forever. And so I repeat, when there's something hard to be done, the adults should do it, not the children. Besides, no one is born gay. There are a number of reasons that people experience persistent same-sex attraction, but even the American Psychological Association admits, and I have the full quotation here on the slide, and I quote, "There is no consensus among scientists about the exact reasons that an individual develops a heterosexual, bisexual, gay, or lesbian orientation. Although much research has examined the possible genetic, hormonal, developmental, social, and cultural influences on sexual orientation, no findings have emerged that permit scientists to conclude that sexual orientation is determined by any particular factor or factors." And yes, I checked, there's a website web link right there on the slide, which you'll receive, and I checked before I came. The American Psychological Association still has this on their website. They admit that they have no idea why some people are born gay. There is no gay gene. This has been proven numerous times, and I'm showing some of the more recent studies here on this slide. Now, some people say that nobody can stop being gay. Well, you know, that's a very bold statement. Even a single person who was once gay and who changes their patterns of attraction, behavior, thoughts, and feelings, even one person like that is enough to disprove the claim that no one can stop being gay. And the fact is, people change every day. Some do it through counseling and therapy. Others have a conversion experience with no counseling at all. Some people, for a variety of reasons, just decide they've had enough and they walk away from it all. This is one group of evangelical Christians in California who once identified as LBGT, and they, quote, celebrate the love of Jesus and his freedom in their lives. Obviously, more than one person here who has walked away from the self-proclaimed sexual identity. And I have interviewed the people who are shown here on this slide. They and many others can testify nobody is born gay. In fact, nobody has to stay gay. The woman shown here in this slide, Charlene Cothran, said to me in this interview, "I can tell you the exact moment that I decided to become a lesbian. I had been abused by too many men, and I said, I'm never having sex with a man again." She was not born gay. And here are a few studies showing that people can change their patterns of sexual attraction and that the efforts to change do not harm people. And no one, repeat, no one is born in the wrong body. A person can change their appearance and behavior, but nobody can change the sex of their body. Mr. Walt Heyer, shown here, lived as a woman for many years. He detransitioned and is now married to a woman. He gives counsel and support to other people who are struggling with their gender identity. Most importantly, there are lots of ways to be a girl. There are lots of ways to be a boy. If you feel out of place or awkward in the so-called typical sex roles, that doesn't mean you were born in the wrong body. That idea is ridiculous and unscientific. At the beginning of this talk, I mentioned that we in Louisiana could not recover from Hurricane Laura by ourselves. We needed the help of many people from across the country to restore the power and bring us fresh food and water. Likewise, we cannot recover from the hurricane of the sexual revolution without help. We need divine help. We need prayer, of course, but we also need the communion of the saints. Someone from outside the current social structures. We need to ask our heroes who have gone before us in the faith to intercede for us. We need to rescue holy souls from purgatory, and when they get to heaven with our help, they will be very glad to help us in return. Think of all the souls with no one to pray for them. 500 years worth of Protestant Christians with no one to pray for them. These people are our secret weapon. At the heart of the universe is a deep and abiding love. God loves every person who has ever been conceived. God wants our participation in his loving creation. This is the heart of traditional Christian sexual morality. And I am not ashamed to say that this is what I believe. Thank you. This concludes the first part of the talk. Now, organizers, I want to be clear because what it says here is not necessarily what's correct. How long do you want me to keep talking, fellows? Do you want me to stop? Do you want me to go on? 30 minutes? 15 minutes? 10 minutes? 10 minutes! All right. Speed talk. We're going to have a speed talk. All right. We got 3 big ideas that we're going to talk about for you to understand the sexual revolution. And I'm afraid I'm going to talk a little faster, so I hope you guys in the translation booth are ready. Okay. This book is my most recent book called The Sexual State. And if this book was a catalog of the crazy things going on, it was out of date the minute it was published, because there's new craziness every single day. It's endless. But there are only 3 big ideas that you have to master, and here they are. The sexual revolutionaries hold that a good and decent society needs to do 3 things. First, a good and decent society should separate sex from babies. I call that the contraceptive ideology. Second, a good society should separate both sex and babies from marriage. I call that the divorce ideology. And finally, the sexual revolutionaries hold that we should wipe out all differences between men and women, except those that the individuals specifically choose to bear, and that I call the gender ideology. Now, I developed this typology during the debates over gay marriage because I realized that people had already redefined marriage in their minds. In the West, people have already separated sex from babies, thinking that the sexual act is unimportant and basically is privatized. People have already come to believe that attaching children to their parents is not important because we've already had years and years of divorce. And so they've already come to believe that men and women are really truly the same. There's no big differences between men and women. And so the sex of the body is unimportant, okay? And so therefore, they couldn't figure out why we were saying we don't want gay marriage. They figured the only possible reason is that we hate them, right? We're haters. That's the only reason that they could think of in their minds, because in their minds, they had already progressed this far in the definition of marriage. So let me zip through here real quick. I'm going to say just a couple of things about each of these ideologies, and then we'll close. The contraceptive ideology, this next slide, I want you to know American Catholics think it's hysterically funny. American Protestants don't understand. Let's see if it survives translation. Humanae Vitae, Paul VI, I told you so, right? So you get it, This is the joke. Anyway, in this part of the talk, I generally go through and discuss what the contraceptive ideology has done to society. So I'm going to skip over that part, only to say that it's not just the pill, it's the ideology. You must get past the idea that the pill, this inanimate object, caused all these problems. The fact is that it's the ideology. And what's the point of the ideology? What did the revolutionaries really want? What they really wanted was technology that would allow people to have sex outside of marriage, that would allow recreational sex. That's what they really wanted. That's what they were aiming for with the technology of the pill. And that's what the whole ideology is all about, as you probably know. It is normal for sex to be considered a sterile activity, right? That's the norm throughout the West. I want to say a few words now about the divorce ideology. Divorce ideology, in a sense, is the most deadly because it's saying children don't really need their parents. So let me pause here for just a moment and tell you what it's like in the United States around divorce. Anyone can get divorced for any reason they want. And most divorces take place against the wishes of one of the people. Okay? And so what happens is that the government takes sides with the person who wants the marriage the least. One person doesn't want the marriage anymore, the marriage ends. No discussion about it. What happens to the child? We're supposed to tell the child, honey, mommy and daddy don't love each other anymore, but we still love you. And a little 5-year-old thinking, wait, mommy's half of who I am, daddy's half of who I am. They say they love me, but they don't love each other? That doesn't make sense. And it doesn't make sense. It doesn't really make sense. And so children live with one parent for a while, and then they live with another parent for a while. And when the remarriage happens, which it always does, right? When the remarriage happens, the child of the new marriage becomes more important than the child of the first relationship. The child feels like a leftover. There's no pictures of that child with both parents in both of their houses, okay? This is what children have to live with in the United States because of the divorce ideology. And there's much more that I could say about this. The gender ideology, the original gender ideology was modern feminism, which taught us that men and women are identical, except that women are better. That's what we were all brought up with. And so therefore, if you see any differences between men and women, this is evidence of some kind of injustice, okay? And we must therefore outlaw, we got to do something about all these injustices. Well, of course, if men and women really are different, you're never going to be able to get this done, right? So now we're to the point, the new gender ideology is that if somebody wants to describe themselves as a person of the opposite sex, this is not only permitted, but endorsed, and the whole society has to go along with it. I'm going to point to just one slide here of all the material I have. Do you guys get it that I have a lot of information here? Any question you have, we have answers. We just don't have, we need a coffee break, so we can't do them all. But I want to just call your attention to this one point here. The word transgender can be used to mean at least 6 different things that I have up here on the slide, okay? And we have a whole talk that spells that out, okay, that explains each one of those words and what they mean and how they're all different from each other. Here's the point I want to make to you. When somebody is using one word to mean 6 things, they are up to no good, and you must never use their language. You must never use their terminology. You use their terminology, it's like picking up a live hand grenade. It's going to go off in your face. All right, so what I like to say is Bruce Jenner is a man who says he's a woman. That's how I like to put it. And I don't know how that translates into Polish, right? But they're just, okay. The basic point that holds all of these things together is that it's the idea that the body is unimportant. The body is unimportant, the sex of the body is unimportant, and therefore we can reconstruct it however we want. In the United States, the sexual revolution spent a lot of energy building up gay marriage, building up the run-up to gay marriage. And as soon as they got that, they immediately turned to transgenderism. Why did they do that? Because it was not really about marriage in the first place. It was really about the revolution. And this is the idea I want to leave you with. Transgenderism furthers the goal of destabilizing the sex of the body, of disassociating a person from the sex of their body. For the true revolutionary, the issue is never the issue. What you seem to be talking about is not really what you're talking about. The issue is always the revolution, and the revolution is always about power. This is what you must understand about the sexual revolution. The problem with the sexual revolution, the contraception ideology, separating sex from babies, guess what? Sex makes babies. Is that true in Poland? It's true in America. It's true, right? It's just true. Sex makes babies. Separating sex and babies from marriage, kids actually need their parents. This is a fact. And men and women really, truly are different. So the body really is significant. Now, the sexual revolution is irrational. It's impossible. And I spent a lot of time trying to explain to people how crazy this thing was and how it could never work. Probably you've tried that too, right? Why does that never go anywhere? Why do they not care when you prove that they're crazy? It's because the sexual revolution, the irrational thing about it, means that it can't stand on its own. It has to be propped up all the time with force and propaganda. Power and propaganda. That is what it's really all about. You think it's about solving the problem that they've told you about, but really it's a vehicle for the accumulation of power. The sexual revolution is a totalitarian ideology that no Christian should have anything to do with. That is the truth of the thing. And we know that this is a fantasy. Okay, I call it a fantasy ideology. The sexual revolution is a fantasy ideology. And we know that fantasy ideologies always target the family, they always target the church. Going back through all of these different dictators and totalitarians that you can think of, going all the way back to Robespierre, they always had something impossible that they demanded that everybody accept. And that's where we are with the sexual revolution. That's the thought that I want to leave you with. The first part of the talk is that Christian sexual ethics can be defended. It can be defended at the deepest possible level. I could be here all day giving you more and more information, but we got to have a coffee break. And the second point that I want you to see is that the very craziness of it is, for its proponents, actually its strength. It's something crazy that gives them a blank check for more and more accumulation of power. That is what we're dealing with. Thank you so much for your attention and for the opportunity to bring this message of the Ruth Institute to you here today. Thank you.